Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Cahill and welcome back to my channel. I am finally going to be showing you how I prepared to take draft 1 all the way through to draft 2. So Project Mystic is my YA paranormal fantasy. I wrote it over April and May of this year. Around August I started my revision process in order to take it from draft 1 to draft 2. So we are at the final stages of that now. As you can see over in this beautiful little corner, I am inputting all of the outline, all of my notes, all of the stress I have put into this over the past few weeks. It's finally going officially into Scrivener, so I can start rewriting that next year. I like to think that my revision process is sort of set in a particular way, but to be honest, it sort of does change. It changes mostly depending on the state of the first draft of whatever novel it is I happen to be revising. With Project Mystic, I thought I had done a good job in writing this story. The prose, the style reads pretty clean. The characters are quite decent, which is not like me at all. The plot is the plot. It needed a lot more work in order to prepare me for the preparation of draft 2. This is my Project Mystic folder. I am covering the official title with my hands because even though it has an official title, I'm not ready to share it yet, not until the story is done. But yeah, I use this notebook for literally everything at the moment in regards to revision, which is not something that I usually do. I usually do it all on the computer. This revision process involved a lot of free writing, so it's easier for me to free write on paper and have all my notes on paper rather than on a screen. We started very simply with my colour codes. Take this into very good account because this is going to be popping up everywhere. I colour code all the time when I revise. The topics that I highlight and colour code change more or less depending on, again, the state of the plot. They usually encompass such things as plot, subplot, antagonist, world building, pacing, exposition, etc, etc. And I pick round about 5 depending on what I think the story needs more work on. So for Project Mystic, we've got plot, character, antagonist, subplot, and magic system. So these are the 5 things that I need to focus on more. So all of my notes are always color coded with specific things highlighted to the matching color, so I can sort of see without having to read much what it is that I need to work on the most, which was plot and magic system, character and subplot and antagonist. First thing I did, which is something I don't always do, is the second I wrote the end, I got out my lovely little notebook and I started writing notes of everything that I had in my head, that I knew from everything that I remembered that I just wrote, the things that I wanted to change in regards to plot, in regards to character, questions that I needed to ask myself in order to go forward to the second draft. All separated into different categories. We've got relationships, character arcs, plot is on here as well, and the pacing. Not that there was an issue with pacing, it's just something I personally wanted to know about. So everything that I needed to make sure that I explained or dove into or looked into with more detail is there. Things that I wanted to work on for character arc, things that I wanted to work on for plot, they are all in there, and that is just my personal, I call them my pre-revision notes, things that I know I'm going to be looking for going into the second draft and the reread. Once I've done my pre-revision notes, I put the story away. I put it away. I know some people like to do this, I know some people don't, and there's always some sort of debate about how long you should put a novel away for before you look at it again. I always take at least 1 month off of looking at or thinking about the novel. At least 1 month. Sometimes I'll go back to it straight away after exactly a month has passed. If I'm busy doing something else, that might take a couple more months. I think it took a couple of months for me to go back to Project Mystic. I think I finished it in May, and then the end of June, beginning of July, I think, I started looking at it again and working on it properly. That sort of 1 month minimum gives my brain ample time to sort of forget everything that I have done in regards to the story. Obviously, I still remember the plot, I know the characters, I have in my head bits and pieces that happened, but the specific details or intricacies that I have put into the book, certain moments in certain scenes, I'll like completely forget that I've written them. They're always a nice surprise to find, yes. And it allows me to go into the reread for the first to second draft with more or less fresh eyes and more of an open mind, because I'm not so closely connected to everything that I have just written. During my time off of Project Mystic, I sent it to alpha readers, which is something that I don't always do. I'm doing it a little bit more often now because I find the initial critique and feedback from an outside source just helps me immensely when it comes to revising and reworking draft 1 to draft 2. Obviously, this isn't something you need to do if you're not completely comfortable with people reading a very, very rough draft of your book. Obviously, that can wait until later on. But I give them a warning. Here's this pile of crap. It sucks. Tell me what you think about plot and characters or anything specific you think might need work on. And to be honest, there's a lot of things that they caught that I wouldn't have even had in mind going into my reread. So their feedback, what they spotted, their overall thoughts on the novel itself have really driven the way that I have rewritten and have really driven how I have resorted out the plot. And I feel like I'm further along with that help than I would be if I didn't have them read it in the first place. So once I got the feedback from my alpha readers, I wrote them all down in my book as well. I cherry-picked the pieces of critique and the pieces of feedback that I personally agreed with or that I knew I wanted to work on in the novel. Some pieces of critique I didn't bother with. Some of it I was like, that's good, but I don't quite need it for this draft. So I cherry-picked the ones I wanted to work on. So they are all written in here. We have questions that need answering that the readers were confused about. As you can see, I have color-coded every single one of these so I knew what the focus was. This is why I like color-coding all of my notes, because even without having to physically read any of these specific points, I can clearly see that most of the work I'm going to have to do in order to fix Project Mystic is on plot because of all of the blues that are highlighted. This is why I color code, people. It's so helpful. The next thing I do once my time is up, once you've gotten your alpha reader feedback, if you decide to go to alpha readers, is the reread of the novel. I usually do 2 rereads of my novels. I will do a read through as a reader, where I will just pick up on bits I was bored, bits that confused me, bits where the characters didn't quite make sense, very general things that I would look for if I was just reading a standard book. And then after I've made notes on those things, I would go back and I would read it through as a writer, which is more picking up on things like where the plot needs work, where I need to insert the beginning of or resolve any subplots that might happen to be in the novel. I will see what bits I don't need in there. I will note down all of the places where I can add things and add scenes to make things make sense, and then combined the reader notes and the writer notes would aid me into replotting and re-outlining the story. I didn't do that with Project Mystic because I had the alpha readers. They did what I essentially do as the reader read anyway. Their feedback was the reader comments that I take forward that I do myself. So I didn't bother with a reader read through. I did just the writer read through, but I did it a little bit differently than I usually do. I did it chapter by chapter this time. So basically what I did was I went through, and every single thought that I had in my head while I was reading the chapter that I felt was important enough to immediately address going into draft 2, I wrote down. So for the first chapter in Project Mystic, we follow Tala, who is the main protagonist of the 5 POVs that we have. She's lurking around, having just robbed a dead body, and she gets chased and captured by the police, is questioned, and then ultimately let go. I like that beginning because it gives a real sense of Tala's character, but the only thing I had going through my head was, is this believable? If she gets caught, would she not get taken down or arrested or anything like that? Like, they just let her go. And then I just did that for every single chapter. I went through every single thought I had, critique wise. No niceness in here, I wrote down. And then I went through afterwards and I highlighted specific important ones in regards to plot, subplot, character, antagonist and magic system that I definitely needed to work on and put in, even if the other ones I didn't quite manage to. I highlighted all the important ones. Again, you can see that we have a lot of character as opposed to plot in the beginning, and then as we go further we have more plot, more magic system, more antagonists come in that need work, because the plot then devolved slowly as we went, as I focused on the characters and their relationships a little bit more than the actual plot. So going forward, as I'm doing the outlining, I can go to the relevant chapter notes and I can make sure that these points make their way into my official outline so they are addressed in the future. Usually when I'm taking it from draft 1 to draft 2, that is as much work as I do. I then take that and I sort of do a very brief mini re-outline, and then I start, you know, redrafting. Project Mystic needed a lot more work than that, so I had a lot more prep work to do in order to sort of get the plot to the place it needed to be. The next thing I did, combining my reader feedback and my chapter by chapter notes I made myself, I did a few little plotting notes. Things that I needed to make sure that I put into the plot because those things specifically were missing. We sort of need to work on the motivation and focus of the characters before they head into the antagonist magic portion of everything. So we want more focus on a specific goal, which I've noted down in here. The antagonist is not very three-dimensional. He's very one-dimensional actually. So I've made a point to put in that we need to find out a lot more about the antagonist and their motivations and their goals and why they're doing what they're doing. We need to discover certain things a little bit earlier in order for the plot to make sense and have more suspense and drive. Everything in my plotting notes on this page here, and I think that little bit just there, these are things that I need to put into this novel. So this is a page that I'm going to keep coming back to all the time, and I will be ticking it off once I have made sure that it is both in the outline and has actually been written into the draft as well. These are the important points right here. This is everything that is wrong with the novel. I'm joking, the entire notebook is everything that's wrong with the novel. From the plotting notes, I went into a brain dump. This was very important for me because I don't like just sitting at my PC and thinking, how do I need to rework this plot? What do I need to do? That work is too focused for me. It's too planner, and my brain doesn't get along well with planning things to the degree that I would love to be able to plan my things. This is why this has worked out so well for me, because I did a brain dump. I did free writing in regards to all of the issues I needed to work out in regards to the plot. I free wrote all of the plot holes that I had, all of the backstory that I needed. I free wrote all of the connections that all of these plot threads had together in order to create some sort of semblance of a decent, coherent point A to B to C to D, etc to Z. Sorry, looking at this reminded me that on the way home from dropping the kids off at school this morning, I had actually figured something out that I hadn't written in the book before, so I was just writing it down so I didn't forget. All of these plot notes that I have here sort of go through different things. Why the antagonist is doing this, why this character has done that, how do we get from this point A to this point B, what information do these characters need to find out in order to get to the next point. We have me attempting at the bottom here to sort out the characters' goals, motivations, their wants and their needs, which I very quickly gave up on. That's something I don't know if I'm going to even bother with in draft 2. We'll write it and then see from there, with all the extra detail, more about the characters. We have how I'm going to rework the beginning, changing scenes and moments and putting them into different orders to try and make them all make sense. We have me noting down specific moments that I thought of while free writing that I wanted to add into the book to sort of give more characters more depth, give them something else to do. So all of these notes here are also very important because this contains how everything has changed. Trying to piece together everything has been really difficult for me, and I sort of tried my hardest to avoid doing it. I was like, okay, now that I've done the plotting notes, I can start the re-outlining. No. Or now that I've done my brain dump and I've sorted out all of the big bits, now I can start re-outlining. But I still held myself back because I felt like I didn't have enough information. I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do with the plot enough in order for me to consciously make the decision of this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and then this happens. So I procrastinated again and employed another method in order to help me decide what needed to go into this plot, where it needed to go, and what I needed to do. And that is my post-it note scene by scene here, which is in the back of the notebook. Again, this isn't something that has a specific rule point to it. I basically went through and on each post-it note, I wrote down a plot point that needed to happen in the book. They're completely out of order, but we've got things like aftermath of the cliff, which is part of the climax. Freya confronts her mother, interpreting tarot reading, someone gives information on a specific location. Every single point, every single plot element, every single subplot element that needed to be in the novel, I put into these post-it notes. And doing that, I could sort of see all of the points it was that I needed to make. I could add different scenes that I had in my head. I could sort of work out, right, so this certain event happens. What do we need to happen in order to make this event happen? Or what needs to happen after this event? In certain cases, working backwards from a scene in order to find out how we got there in the first place. So this scene list here is basically my outline. It's just out of order. So of course I needed to put it in order. I put it in order here on Google Docs so I could see it more clearly. Act 1 is in green, Act 2 is in orange, then the midpoint is the bold black, and then we've got red as Act 3. I did it this way so I could easily move scenes up and down from the scene list post-it notes that I had in my notebook, so I could sort of get a sort of equal amount for Act 1 and Act 3, so they are sort of the same length, and then obviously midpoint was in the middle of the novel, so I sort of like was highlighting and moving things up and down, deciding where I wanted it to happen. This was my final, this is what I need to do now in order to prep the novel. It was very difficult. I'm going to move now so I can, there we go. I went a little overboard trying to prep myself and the novel in order for me to put it all on Scrivener. Like I've never gone into so much detail before, but I needed to have a certain confidence level in the way that I'd arranged the plot, in the way that I had input all of this new information. I needed to make sure that I was confident that yes, this is the way I need to go before I started putting it into Scrivener. And after one of my original alpha readers sort of gave the scene list or the major plot point list a quick view, I was confident that this outline, this specific way that I had written the plot was going to work. It's very terrible that I need validation from others in order to do stuff. All of these different elements, all of the overthinking that I had in regards to this plot has made me confident that I have got the right story that I'm going to tell. I'm telling it in the right way. And hopefully once I've written draft 2, the plot is not going to need to change and I can just work on adding depth and setting and character arcs, etc, etc, which is what I look forward to in draft 3. Now that I've written my personal notes, my alpha reader notes, my chapter by chapter notes, my plotting notes, my brain dump notes, my post-it note scene list and my Google Drive scene list, I am ready. I was ready, I've already started to put everything into Scrivener. And here is where we are. I have never written a more aesthetically pleasing outline in my entire life, and that is because of all of the bloody work that I put into trying to make it a decent one. I'm still a little bit iffy about the way that I have sorted out all of the POVs in regards to the novel. There are 5 different ones. Do I know if they're in the right place or not? Not quite sure. Do I know if certain scenes are going to work in a certain character's POV? No, I'm not, but I have done my best with the weird way that I did my POVs. Basically, I went through and I color coded again, as I always do, the specific scenes which I knew had to be in a specific character's POV. For example, the first scene is Tala's intro, so that has to be in her POV. The second scene is Anika's intro, so that had to be in Anika's POV, and etc, etc. I went through and put all of the POVs in the correct place, and then I again cherry picked, oh, this can be in this character's POV because they happen to be there. This can be in this character's POV because they haven't had one for a good 6 scenes or so. And that's basically how I did it. But we'll see how the exact POVs work as we go into it. And because obviously of all of the prep work that I had actually managed to do, I have so much more detail in regards to all of these scene synopsises. A lot more than I usually have, which is like 1 or 2 sentences. And I'm looking forward to finishing off all of the scene synopsis that I have. And then over here in the notes section beneath, I can go into even more detail if I need to or if I want to, in order to give myself the best chance at best outline possible to make writing the second draft as easy as I can. So that was my revision process in order to go from draft 1 to draft 2 of Project Mystic. Let me know down in the comments below, have you ever taken draft 1 to draft 2 before? What is your go-to way of revising that you do no matter what? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Good thoughts and happy writing.